Hi, I'm Michael Rubino. For those that don't know me, I've spent over the last 10 years helping thousands of people create safe and healthy environments. You know, people often ask me, what's the big deal about mold? It's something that we don't want to have in abundance in our environment. If you didn't know about mold, it's actually part of our ecosystem. It's a naturally occurring phenomenon in this universe. And what it does, it is actually meant to break down organic matter that is decaying. So when you think about it like that, think about too much mold in our homes helping decay our bodies. That's exactly what's happening. Now, when it comes to building a healthy environment, we need to keep water out. That's the key. So things like roofing, doors, and windows are going to be some weak points where water can intrude. If you see any separation around doors and windows, like crack caulking or a separation around the flashing, you want to call someone right away to make that repair. With doors and windows, you want to take action quickly because even the smallest things can be just the tip of the iceberg. We're here to talk about the kitchen, the heart of the home. Things like kitchen sink leaks, appliance leaks, and even appliances that have ductwork that does not run outside can create issues inside of our home. If you see any signs of water, no matter how small, it could be a sign of mold and bacteria. You see, certain species of mold are actually lighter in color and harder to detect. So it's always important that even the littlest water stain gets paid attention to. A bathroom is another wet environment in our home. We have things like vanities, toilets, showers, bathtubs, etc. We want to make sure that we're being diligent and checking for these areas to make sure we don't have things like mold and bacteria. One of the most important things is the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, also known as HVAC, because it's basically the lungs of the home. It supplies air in through return ducts, conditions it, and puts air back out. And that's the air that we're breathing. One of the biggest problems with HVAC systems is filtration. The standard filters that you get at places like Home Depot or Lowe's are not efficient enough to remove these tiny particles like mold and bacteria, which then contaminates the air that we're breathing. So I'm standing in a finished basement, which by the way, I do not recommend. You see, basements that are subgrade are prone to moisture. Every time it rains, water pools against the foundation of the home and something called hydrostatic pressure takes effect. This allows the water to pour through something like a cement foundation in the form of vapor diffusion. Water, if you didn't know, follows the path of least resistance, and it's going to move to the drier side. That's what we call vapor diffusion when it comes into our basements and our crawl spaces and actually increases the humidity level. And with things like insulation and drywall in your basement, which can provide a food source for mold, mold can start to thrive pretty quickly. Now, when we're talking about particles this small, cracks, crevices, and interstitial spaces are like gateways for mold and bacteria to come from our crawl spaces and basements into our living environments. Okay, next I want to talk to you about attics. Attics are really important because the roof is over the attic. Roof leaks often lead to mold growing inside of an attic. Just like how we talked about how basements and crawl spaces can impact our air quality, so can attics. Some of the things you want to look out for in an attic are, of course, roof leaks. Those are pretty obvious. But what about mold growing all over the framing and the wood due to something like poor ventilation? Ventilation is so important. I can't tell you how many clients' homes I've been to that had ventilation that was blocked. Attics are typically hot, and there's cold air blowing through that duct. Now, I don't know if you remember early on in science class, but when hot temperature mixes with cold temperature, it provides condensation. Condensation on ducts and vents can cause mold to grow on the ceilings below. So it's always very important to make sure that everything is very well insulated to keep apart that temperature differential. Now, mold loves insulation. As a matter of fact, if you have a leak, odds are when that mold starts growing and colonizing, it's gonna be producing mold spores that are gonna get all over the insulation. So it's really important when you are moving forward with remediation of an attic, do not leave that insulation behind. Replace all of it. I want to talk about landscaping and grading. Landscaping and grading can negatively impact the interior of the home. When the grading is sloped towards the house, every time it rains, water is going to be directed towards the house, which is a problem. Another big issue is too much landscaping around the home, especially if you have mulch as opposed to rocks for your landscaping. The problem with mulch is it's going to harbor moisture and have that moisture sitting against the house. Mold loves mulch and it loves plants. As a matter of fact, it typically grows on plants. So if you have too many plants outside the home, this can impact the air quality inside the home, especially if you like to open doors and windows. So our roof can be made of a couple different materials. It's typically asphalt shingle, concrete, tile, or metal. Every type of roof should have some sort of waterproofing membrane underneath it. Now we hear a lot about gutters, but there's another word that's associated with gutters that we don't know much about, and it's called leaders. Gutters and leaders actually create the gutter system of our home. The leaders or downspouts is what actually travels the water from our roof and making it safely onto the floor. The problem is that sometimes our leaders literally dump water out right next to our foundation, which can impact our living space. Now, for all my fellow pet lovers, there's something that you want to be aware of. Mold and bacteria is abundant in the soil. And so if you have furry animals that love to play around in the dirt and come bring that inside, you want to be mindful to wash their paws before they come back inside. And this same sentiment applies to our shoes. That's why you always want to take your shoes off at the front door.